No one's going to go, can't even beat Mike Tyson. No one has ever said that in their entire life since probably his first time in a boxing.
Because also for Will Ferrell, it's like, that is, like, he's a funny guy, and that's a funny thing to do. Like, it works, man. It works. Bloody hell. I'm actually, mate, that's actually a good idea. Isn't it?
It's going to be a Super League. It's not a Super League. It's not what we're calling it, but it is going to be a Super League.
Hello and welcome along to Not Another Sports Pod, episode number 20 with myself, David, and Mr. Oliver Wilson. And look, it's mid-November, the clouds are overhead, the temperature's dropping, Christmas is on the horizon, which could mean only one thing. Mr. Oliver Wilson is off to the UAE. Off to Dubai later on today, Ollie, for a bit of VitD, a bit of sunshine, feet up, but I'm sure you're squeezing some work as well.
Oh, there'll be work for sure. I mean, I'm definitely doing our South American work while I'm out there. And there will be plenty of filming as well for a few bits for some golf stuff. So always on the hustle, Mr. Windsor, always on the hustle. So, but it is time to get a little R&R involved in that as well. A couple of days just relaxing, I think.
You've been there before, haven't you? Hit the golf course and you got a couple of mates out there.
Yeah, it's the third time. It's not my favourite place. It's easy. I've got a very good friend from university who has a house, so it's an easy place to go and get some sunshine at this time of year. And it's cheap to get there. It's cheaper than going to the US than flying to America. It's crazy how much travel's gone up.
Well, we're going to talk about the UAE later because the WTA finals just got played. The kind of women's tennis end-of-year tournament, Ollie, and the prize money for the winner was £3.7 million. Which is for tennis is a shitload of cash. So let's talk about that later. That was played in Saudi Arabia. Look, there's so much to get through today, Ollie. It's ridiculous. I know that the fans are screaming for 2 pods a week, but we're going to hold firm on the 1 pod a week at the moment. But look,
there's a lot of news, big news taking place here in the sports world.
I do want to talk about Trump's impact on the sporting world. Let's talk Jake Paul and Tyson. Let's talk NFL. I've got another Mourinho meltdown minute. But we got to start with the Premier League title race, Ollie, and not another sports pod. I want to ask you a question to start off. So, Pep Guardiola has been in management for 16 years, nearly 900 games. This is the first time ever, as a manager, he's lost 4 games on the spin. Ever. It's a fork in the road for me. Is this the end of a Pep Guardiola cycle? Is this the end of 16 years of massive dominance and success? 3 La Liga titles at Barcelona, 2 Champions Leagues, went to Bayern, won 3 Bundesligas and loads more, and Club World Cups, all the rest of it. Comes to City, 6 league titles, the interviews, the legal cases, the pressure, everything is come to this point where he's just been insanely successful for 16 years. Yes, at the biggest clubs at the world. But is this the end of a Pep Guardiola cycle? Or is it just at some point you're going to lose 4 games in a row? And like, this is a blip, and they're still in 3 competitions this year, and they could very well still win a treble.
It's not going to change the Pep Guardiola kind of image. It's not going to change the potential dominance this City team could still have. It is very much just a blip. It's a big blip. It's a blip that's getting bigger. Look, Tottenham in the Carabao Cup, does that mean that much to Manchester City? Probably not. Does Bournemouth away? Okay, give that. Bournemouth playing some great football this season. It's a tough place to go to as well down on the south coast. So we've seen plenty of teams struggle against them, particularly in this campaign. The one that would normally stand out more is the Champions League loss to Sporting.
That's a bad one.
The narrative around it. The narrative is more important than anything else. You know, United's new manager last game goes off, beats City, basically the middle finger in the air to the other blue half of Manchester. Perfect way to integrate yourself with United supporters straight away. But again, it doesn't matter. That loss just doesn't matter because the Champions League phase is now this league phase that it is. It's not as important as maybe a group stage defeat. There's plenty of games to sort it out. It really doesn't mean too much. And then Brighton, like losing 2 in a row in the Premier League. If you'd said 10 years ago Bournemouth and Brighton would defeat what is arguably the best side in Premier League history, the most dominant side in Premier League history, you'd go, ooh, that seems odd. It doesn't seem that odd now. Brighton, again, having a great season this year.
Do you think there's any chance, Ollie, Pep Guardiola's contract's out in the summer. Do you think there's any chance internally everyone knows he's going and that's impacted what's happening in the squad?
No, I don't think so. I really don't, because we've never had these kind of seeds of disharmony or anything like that discussed really before at Manchester City. So I don't think you're looking at that as an environment where there's a lack of respect or a lack of desire to work for the manager. And I wouldn't imagine that his potential departure would sow any of those seeds at all. So I just don't see it as that. I see it as like, it's a rough 4-game run. In 2 of them are in cup competitions that there isn't a high priority right now for those games in terms of the Sporting and the Tottenham game. So it's just 2 defeats in the Premier League, and that's going to happen, and that will happen. It's just stringing them all together. What I actually think it's more damning than anything else is Manchester City this fragile? To lose one key player in the middle of the park and to suddenly look...
The Ballon d'Or
like
winner. I mean, one key player, the best player in the world.
Yeah, for sure, Rodri, but is like the best player in the world at the moment. But Barca would lose Messi, but they wouldn't lose 4 in a row. You know what I mean? Like, Real Madrid could lose Cristiano Ronaldo at his pomp. They wouldn't lose 4 in a row. It seems a very odd fragility that we discussed already. You know, the difference in terms of the win-loss ratio with Rodri in that City side is outstanding. But it's weird that this City side is that fragile when you've got that many superstars in it. That's what I'm more worried about. If Rodri's out and you can't replace him, that's a real problem. But that's a real problem as a football manager.
So, City, I think we both agree, is still, of course, they're still banging the Premier League title race. They're 5 points behind. I do think if City were 5 points clear at this stage and Arsenal and Liverpool were catching them, we'd pretty much be saying it was over. But because it's Liverpool top, you know, we haven't quite seen it yet, what Slot's going to do over the course of a season, I think it's still very much in play. What I would say about Arsenal, who drew 1-1 with Chelsea yesterday, Arsenal are 9 points behind Liverpool at the top of the table, yeah? Do you know the last time a side came from 9 points behind to win a league? I'll tell you, it was Arsenal in 1998. So it's a while back at this stage of the Premier League season. It's a while back.
And it's a different feeling Arsenal side to that one. That's for sure.
For sure.
Very different
but, you know,
Arsenal side.
There's a reason you can't really fall that many points back after 11 games. It's because that's 3 or 4 weekends of everything going right for you and everything going wrong for those above you. So I think it's a bit of a stretch for Arsenal. I don't know how many points you can be behind after 11 games, but yeah, 9 points behind. What's also really interesting to me is that 4 points now separate Chelsea in 3rd and Man United in 13th. So you've got that massive, like, in terms of quality that what we've seen so far in the Premier League season. Between Chelsea in 3rd and Man United in 13th, there's nothing there. Like, if Tottenham had won yesterday and they lost at home against Ipswich picking up their first Premier League win of the season, Tottenham go 3rd. So there's a massive, like, bottleneck in the middle of that Premier League table, which I think over the kind of second quarter of the season will unravel a little bit, I think.
It's becoming like the Sky Bet Championship a little, though. Like, the Championship, I think, has 3 points.
Love you called it the Sky Bet as well.
And I'm on brand, mate.
Love it.
The
CONMEBOL Libertadores, yeah, I love it.
I never did Barclays Premier League or anything like that, but Sky Bet Championship just rolls off the tongue quite nicely. League 1 and League 2 are that, but
true.
Yeah. That's got a tiny gap between, you know, 4th from bottom and the middle of the pack. I think it's 3 points because Sheffield Wednesday had a win a couple of weeks ago and went from perilously close to the relegation zone to, we've got 8 teams between us. Which I don't think actually is a bad thing. I think it's a great thing that you can have one side can win 3 games in a row and go launching straight up the table and get themselves right into European spots. I'd much rather see that than anything else and a bit of variety in the Premier League. I want to ask you, Dave, as a Liverpool fan, though, do you think it's a bit harsh that Arne Slot is continuing still to go on? If Pep Guardiola started this season like Liverpool has started this season, what a just perfect management of how to run a side, the defensive solidarity he's brought into this team.
Do you think people would be like that, or would they be like, yep, that sounds about right, that's what he does every year?
I guess there'd be maybe a bit more nonchalant, but I think he'd still be lauded way more than a brand new manager coming into what was a good team, but everyone went, it's going to fall apart without Klopp. And there's a horrible arrogance of the Kloppites that are still that kind of were
because I think the narrative was, Ollie, that Jurgen Klopp had overachieved with that squad. And I think I said this on Not On Sports Pod maybe a month or so back, that there's also the very real possibility that he underachieved with this squad. And I think that Arne Slot he's improved 2 players. Now, whether those players improved because of Arne Slot coming in or whether that's just a natural evolution of their game, I don't know. But he's improved 2 players. He's improved Luis Diaz, who was a brilliant but kind of erratic winger. He's turned him into just a machine, like a goal-scoring and assist machine. Stats are pretty similar to Salah this season. And he's also improved Ryan Gravenberch, who now, if you tried to buy Ryan Gravenberch, he's 60, 80 million pounds. Like, he's that good, right? So he's actually taken 2 key players in the team that obviously were underachieving under Klopp, and he's brought them up to the level that they, I think, naturally are. And I think in doing those 2 things, you've suddenly turned aside that, we're in a title race last year until kind of mid-March. You've just taken them up that extra gear. And so I think not much gets spoken about improving current players. I think it's all about, transfers now and tactics and interviews and all this kind of stuff. But essentially, you are still a head coach. You do still have an influence on footballers on the training ground. And I think Slot has improved those 2 players. The rest of the squad have pretty much just kept the quality they've got. Don't forget, the bulk of this squad won the Champions League and the league with Liverpool. That the back 5 is essentially the same. Kanate and for Matip, arguably an upgrade. Mo Salah's still there. Yes, Roberto Firmino and Sadio Mane have gone, but you could argue in Jota and Diaz and Nunez and Gakpo, you've kind of replaced their goals and assist output. So it's the same squad for me. He's just massively improved 2 players. All 2 players have massively improved, and as a result of that, I think he should get credit. But I don't know how much credit you can really give someone on the 11th of November, Ollie. You can still end up in the season with nothing. So I think it's just a case of holding fire a little bit. And also his personality kind of elicits that response from you because he's so considered. I think people are reluctant to really push big predictions and heavy emotion on what is quite a reserved man. It doesn't really feel right. It doesn't slot in.
Yeah, I just feel if a bigger name manager came in and had the success that's happening at Liverpool to start this season, we wouldn't be hearing the bloody end of it. I
mean, imagine if Mourinho did it.
Well, that was one of the names. I wanted to say Guardiola again, but the next name I thought of was if Mourinho came into a side and took him straight to the top of the table mid-November with the defensive record, 6 clean sheets so far in the season, which it took him until like mid to late December to do last year. You'd be storming the gates and anointing him as the new king of the cop kind of thing. So and I think maybe that you're right in terms of the response to Slot is because he isn't putting himself out there and
he's just not that character.
Just go and manage. And you touched on it perfectly. It's something I'm clamoring out for in football management at these big clubs, which is it's not about signing the new guy. It's about being the guy that turns the average guy into the great guy. That's the Disney movie story everybody wants to see. Nobody likes the freaking, kids movie when there's the sports star and then the new guy gets bought in and everyone goes, oh, that's a shame. Oh, geez.
It's also why you became a coach, right? That's what you became a coach initially.
Work with players.
Yeah, to work with players and to improve players. Just on Arsenal, Ollie, we spoke last week on Not Another Sports Pod about how this drop-off from Arsenal, I think, was really, really surprising for everyone internally and externally at the football club. Edu, the sporting director, left this week. Now, Edu, of course, was a player, and he won a couple of Premier League titles with Arsenal. He's a wonderful footballer, and then he became the sporting director, and that dovetail with Arteta certainly naturally kind of seemed to fit, right? For your sporting director leaving in mid-November in a season when you're supposed to be challenging for the Champions League and the Premier League is unusual. So Edu has gone to become essentially the CEO of a group of clubs. So Olympiacos, Forest, there's a club in Portugal, and I think they're adding one in Brazil, are kind of the umbrella, and Edu's going to be the focal point. So the sporting director of each of those clubs will report to Edu. Apparently, he doesn't have to leave his home in North London, and he's earning way more money. From Edu's perspective, that's a pretty obvious career upgrade, I would have thought. But from an Arsenal perspective, I do think that's unusual. Your sporting director who's been at the club, who's a big part of the fabric of the football club, has left in November at the same time that you're losing games. It's not the optics of that aren't great.
No, but if you're doing badly at your job and somebody comes and offers you a load of money to work in a brand new role where you have much more power, but it's also diluted because you're running it across 4 or 5 different football clubs, I think Edu isn't necessarily going to be in the firing line. He never really was with Arsenal anyway, but he's going to be even less.
And his signings were great, Ollie. You know, you look at Arsenal signings since Edu's been sporting director. I mean, they bought very intelligently.
Yeah, but I don't really see this as like as big a story as Arsenal. I mean, Arsenal fans were talking about it this week, like it was a disgrace that this former player, he's part of the club, isn't it? It's not really. I mean, shock horror. Footballer takes job at other club that he's meant to be staying at his old club. Like,
Edu and Klopp, mate.
It's just mercenaries.
I'd love to see the tax returns on those two fellas next year because they both love money.
Yeah, fair enough. Just go and make all the money in the world that you want if that's what's going to make you happy. And I'm sure it will be such a joy running 5 different clubs a little bit, as opposed to being fully integrated and feeling like you've got an actual like team bond with another football club. And if you don't care, fine. I struggle. I love being part of like a team. I did team sports growing up, Dave. I enjoy being part of a broadcast team as well. And it's interesting as a freelance, you never potentially feel completely integrated into that broadcast team. But at the same time, when you do and you work on a project for a long period of time, there's nothing better than seeing the team as a group pull through like adversity in some
apart
way,
from someone else
like
offering
that.
you a shitload of money, yeah.
But yeah, I mean, this is like, okay, do you like that feeling, or do you like the idea of just making a ton of money and kind of just being this faceless figure in your flat in London? I mean, I just see him with like 5 computer screens, all have got different Football Manager games up, and he's going like, "Oh, that wonder kid over there at Gremio. Let's see if we can pinch him." And
A
bring him
WhatsApp
into
group with him, with Klopp, Edu, and Ivan Toney, just with like cash emojis and stuff like that.
That's all it is. It's just money emojis, every single thing. Yeah.
We mentioned the Champions. We mentioned the Champions League, Ollie, because this podcast we record this on a Monday morning. Sometimes I feel like we kind of miss that Champions League action midweek, right? But I do just
No worries.
say again.
No worries. I mean,
But I do just want to talk about the Champions League because I think it's look, the Champions League format in this extended 36-team Champions League stage is essentially the European Super League. This is the thing that people like rallied against and there were like protests and nobody wanted. And what we've got now is a Champions League, which is a European Super League. There it is. Like, there it is for everyone to see, hiding in plain sight. I saw a stat that I thought was very interesting. Ollie, there's in the Champions League stage, 144 games will be played, right? To eliminate 12 teams. So you're going to play 144 games of football to essentially eliminate 12 teams. And I actually quite like this league format, by the way. I think it's quite exciting. I think the second 4 games will be way more exciting than the first 4 games. I think you've got the possibility of, Real Madrid and Arsenal and some massive clubs dropping into that playoff round where they have to play another couple of games, I think end of January, start of February, before the round of 16. So I do think that's exciting. But I do think it's a little bit farcical that you've essentially diluted the overall quality and you're also playing a crazy amount of games just to get rid of 12 clubs that were never going to win the Champions League anyway. I'll be Salzburg, like, they're never going to win the Champions League, so why are they there and they're getting eliminated? Obviously that was going to happen anyway. So, yeah, I don't know. European Super League, what do we think?
So, you put it very concisely there with just... We've got 4 potentially exciting games coming up, and there are 4 games that don't really mean anything. And it's like, well, that's what we're looking at right now. And if it wasn't for Arsenal playing Inter, Real Madrid playing Milan on the last week, we'd have been looking at these first 4 games going, there's not really much to get your teeth into because there's no drama yet at this point. And there wasn't that much drama in the Champions League group stage either, because the Champions League has continually just become a way to filter out those sides like a RB Salzburg, like an Olympiacos, for instance. Like, oh, look, you're part of the top table, right? Piss off from the top table. We want to get the big boys in. The big boys are the ones that generate us the money. And if it was down to me, I'd go back to where you only have 1 team from every single league in the Champions League.
Would you really?
It is, yeah.
So you're losing a lot of money there and a lot of eyeballs, Ollie, for the purity of the competition.
Oh, I like sport. Like, money is great, and I hope I can make a lot of money doing anything that I can get my hands on. But, like, I like
Bloody
sport.
hell, Trump wins the election and Windsor and Wilson suddenly a couple of capitalists.
Big ideas for the Champions League. Very big. We're going to have a lot of games, some big clubs.
Okay.
It's It's going to be a Super League. It's not a Super League. It's not what we're calling it, but it is going to be a Super League.
Someone's been watching too much Shane Gillis, mate, because that's not bad at all.
I've been walking around the house, either doing Donald Trump or Forrest Gump, or sometimes a mixture of the two, a Gump and Trump combo, which is terrible. Jenny, she's a great girl, wonderful girl.
A little insight into the Wilson house.
It's been a weird few days. But I got distracted. But there was no jeopardy. I would rather go back to having one team, because you know what was interesting in modern day football? You know, my old man talks about clubs like Red Star Belgrade going on these runs through like major European tournaments. And when I started doing football commentary, there might be a chance to cover a Red Star in a
they're in the Champions League,
like
but yeah, they're getting battered.
Yeah, but that used to be like, ooh, that'd be kind of exciting, because I'd heard these stories growing up. Red Star Belgrade, the history comes with it. And then you're like, there's literally no chance for any of these clubs, without a massive Saudi-backed now financial investment, for them to be able to compete. And I kind of miss that. I miss Manchester United being humiliated, getting knocked out by IFK Gothenburg when I was younger, stuff like that. I mean, these were nights where it wasn't just about, get the stars creating TikTok reels for the UEFA Champions League to put out and for TNT Sport to put out, or whoever's broadcasting it to put out. These were nights of actual footballing tension and drama, where clubs you'd never heard of came across. Dynamo Kiev, even back in the day, as we were kind of moving towards more of the Champions League that we have now. That Rebrov and Shevchenko outfit that went to the Champions League semi-finals. Never going to happen again.
Well, let's never say never, but yeah, we're a long way from that.
The likelihood is so slim because of the scouting networks that are now in. So it pinches all the best talent straight away, super early. 17, 18-year-olds getting picked up, thrown into these giant sides, may never see them again, may never get to develop. In the meantime, all these big clubs just continue to play around with all of the money and spend it on left, right and centre and everything else in the world as well. But so I do miss that. I miss it being a credible sporting, the Champions League achievement, not the top four league. And now what we've got, I don't dislike it, but I just don't see much of a change. And it's not quite as farcical, shall we say, as the Copa Sudamericana change that they did a few years ago, when only one team from each group went through to the knockout stage, and it was joined by the teams that dropped out of the Libertadores. So by the quarterfinals, you could have a team. You could have no teams that have played in the CONMEBOL Sudamericana.
One thing I do really like, Ollie, sorry to interject. One thing I do really like, though, is that no one in the Champions League now drops into the Europa League, and no one in the Europa League drops into the Conference League, because I always thought that was a bit weird and fishy. Like, you've basically lost in a tournament, you didn't qualify, and then all of a sudden you've almost been like promoted into this tournament that you can now win. So I do like that you can't drop into another tournament. I always felt that was really cheap.
Yeah, because the number of times that you'd see a side knocked out the Champions League, suddenly, okay, we only need to win 6 games and we're in the Europa League final kind of thing. And that was ugly. And I think that is the best bit of this change that they've had, is doing exactly that, making it, you're in the Conference League, you're in the Europa League, or you're in the Champions League, and you can't drop down and piss your way around and go to all these other, like, oh, well, here's a support network for you. It's basically the European football equivalent of parachute payments, that was. Of, well, you're out of the Champions League, but you can still have a bit of money through the Europa League and stuff. And that's great, but I'm undecided, and to be honest, at this point, like, it's just, unless there's a great game, like Real Madrid against Milan last week was a great game of football, and I've only seen the highlights, so I can't talk completely about the full 90 minutes, but the highlight package was just awesome to watch. I mean, that's a 10-minute package that you're looking at and going, oh, I'd actually like to see an hour extended highlights or something like that on it, and that's great, but that would also be awesome in the knockout stage, wouldn't it? Like, that's when the tension's there. And then also the lack of home and away, which the group stage had. You get a bit of needling, bit of animosity. I know Arsenal fans, I've seen a lot of their kind of fans on social media saying, I'd love to fucking have another go at Inter and try and get one over on them, and like getting back at the Emirates and all that kind of stuff. And I think that actually missed a trick in this whole thing of maybe have still 4 home and away legs through this league.
I don't mind it at all, this league format, but let's nudge this on a little bit, Ollie. There's 3 football stories that I think we still want to talk about. Let's start with Noel Gallagher as a co-commentator, and this obviously raised a few eyebrows, and I actually got a couple of WhatsApps about it this week from a couple of NASP listeners. Look, I don't.
Nice try. Nice try to integrate NASP into the lexicon.
I don't actually mind it. I don't mind it. They're a network that they can do whatever they want. It's different. It's unique. You're never going to know how good he is unless you try it. You're never, why not Ed Sheeran on Ipswich co-coms, right? Like, would people listen to that? Yes, they would. Like, Tottenham Ipswich yesterday, if you had Ed Sheeran on co-coms for Sky Sports, like, would it be a bit wacky and bumpy and weird? And would he be taking a job away from someone who's in the industry? Yes. But would that be pretty cool and produce some great clips? Yes. So the celebrity co-coms, I don't mind it. And I know Ollie's doesn't like it at all. I'm guessing, Ollie. But just as a punter, mate, I think there's legs in it, and I think it's something we'll see a little bit more of.
I will definitely see more of it, because that's what everybody was talking about the day after. City got battered by Sporting, but the top discussion point around that game was Noel Gallagher was on fucking commentary. It was weird. It made the splash. It drew the attention to the broadcaster, which is what they want. People will go searching for their broadcast clips as opposed to generic broadcast clips of that game to see what Noel Gallagher was saying about when the goals went in. How did he react when Sporting put the fourth past City and all this kind of stuff? It draws the eyes. Attention is currency right now. Money's not currency. Attention is currency. If you generate attention, that's how you generate money. And my drab, dour, pissing on everything on this episode of Not Other Sports.
It has come across, Ollie, but after he's got the Vit D in Dubai, next Monday he's going to be a beacon of optimism.
Bouncing off the walls. No, but it's just, I like, as I say, I like sporting purity and integrity and all that kind of stuff. And
Ollie,
I want to have insight from people that know the game. And look, there are some fans that know so much more than so many of these experts when it comes to their own club.
On that point, I'm going to give you a list of potential co-commentators. You tell me which one you'd most like to hear, okay? Piers Morgan as co-commentator on Arsenal. Usain Bolt as co-commentator on Manchester United. LeBron James, co-commentator on a Liverpool game. We had Gallagher at City. Will Ferrell's a Chelsea fan, maybe. Adele's a Tottenham fan. Can you imagine Tottenham with Adele on co-coms singing every insight? Like, I don't know. It could work, mate. Shakira on the Barca co-coms. Like, we could go on. Rafa Nadal, maybe on Real Madrid co-coms. Boris Becker on Bayern Munich co-coms. There's an industry here. I can see it, man. I can absolutely see it.
Yeah, it's just celebrity fan zone. That's what it is. And maybe it's the next step. I mean, it's interesting you mentioned Ed Sheeran because, again, I'm going through Game of Thrones. I'm very late to the party on that one. And I've just got to the point where the last episode I watched, there was a cameo by Ed Sheeran and there's some knights sat down and Ed Sheeran is leading them in a sing-song. And it's literally a scene that does nothing for the programme in terms of moving on the story or expediting any sort of detail. And it was only because Ed Sheeran went, I'd love to do a cameo in Game of Thrones. And they just chucked this scene in. And I was like, this is when stuff gets too popular, as we've discussed on many times, too many outside factors suddenly start to come into play, and there's too many middlemen that are pushing X, Y, and Z and all this kind of stuff. And we're now at the stage in football broadcasting where we're now looking at someone like Ed Sheeran potentially being on an Ipswich game. And it's just...
mate, I'm excited even hearing you say it. Like, it'll be good. Like, don't worry, they'll be taking co-coms jobs.
Put them in the studio is fine. Like, have that chat, pre-match, post-match, whatever. During a game, don't you want it? You don't want too many voices because too many voices muddles a football broadcast anyway.
Agree.
You want somebody who's removed from the game slightly. I did a commentary this week where my co-commentator's son was playing central midfield and the side got battered. Absolutely battered. And I kind of went quite heavy-handed on him because the opposition had to change goalkeeper after 15 minutes and the young sub-keeper hadn't faced a shot all game, really. And I said it's pretty poor that this side have come out, they've not tested, etc. And after the game, my co-commentator said, I agreed with you, but I couldn't go in on that because that comes back to my son. I can't say anything about the manager, it comes back to my son. I can't say anything about the club, it comes back to my son. And I get that, and it's an awkward position for him to be in. But I also think it's a position that you should never put somebody in general.
Agree.
Like, you shouldn't be covering that game.
Agree.
Same with, like, we had that one with Robbie Savage, and his son was playing, and Savage, I think, was a pundit at least on it, which I think is slightly better than a co-commentator, because you're there to analyse and critique for 90 minutes as opposed to in 5-minute chunks where you can kind of weave around it. But this is what I'm getting at, is that we're just getting into all these problematic scenarios where ideas that seem maybe fun or good don't provide anything. And as we've been told throughout our careers, you need to, in a football broadcast, either be quiet or provide something. And I don't know what celebrity co-commentators provides, except for Instagram clicks and stuff like that.
I mean, except for one of the most important things, like, do you know what I mean? You just said it's an attention economy, so they don't provide anything except for the exact thing that everyone's after these days. I don't know.
I know.
One thing's for sure, though, Ollie, as we both agreed on here, like, that ain't going away. Like, that is not going away, and some of those names will happen.
What's the tipping point? Do you think? Like,
Adele
how far
on
does
Tottenham,
it go?
I think.
Yeah,
that's the I think that's I don't know why I picked on her. I mean, all of them would be ridiculous. Like, Piers Morgan
honestly,
at
I think
Arsenal.
getting like a Will Ferrell or someone, and like because of the American nature as well.
Possibly, yeah. Because then you get maybe
even tougher.
In fact, Will Ferrell on is he a Chelsea fan? Did I say? I mean, I don't know how loose this is, but like, if you get Will Ferrell on like the Conference League final as a co-coms on Chelsea, then you clip it up. You can pick up quite a lot of that US audience, which is what everyone wants, right? And you could egg Will Ferrell on to just sort of say wacky stuff. That could be a great play. Like, if I was a producer at TNT, I'd be on the phone to Will Ferrell, because also for Will Ferrell, it's like he's a funny guy, and that's a funny thing to do. Like, it works, man. It works. Bloody hell! That's actually a good idea, isn't it? Will Ferrell on the Chelsea co-coms? It's a cracking idea.
Yeah.
Okay, let me deliver my Mourinho meltdown minute, Ollie. It used to be the case that you would never really say you were interested in a job that was held by another manager, but Jose Mourinho, in his mad descent into further chaos and calamity, said this week that he wants a Newcastle job if Eddie Howe loses his job. Newcastle won at the weekend, by the way. I just think he just doesn't care anymore, Mourinho. Just doesn't care anymore. Don't know what to say. Like, lost in the Europa League in midweek, won in the league, still 5 points behind Galatasaray, top of the table. But yeah, he wants a Newcastle job. I mean, he wants to be back in the Premier League. I think he'd take the West Ham job. Do you think it happens? Do you think Jose Mourinho gets one more stint in the Premier League in his career?
There's every potential. You want to talk about a Newcastle side that are going to have, continually money invested in them. It's not necessarily an issue with the Saudi backing that they have now. And if you want to talk about what is the most important thing, as we've said for the last 10 minutes or so, is attention. Mourinho garners attention. And Mourinho, I think there's always still that belief that chairman and clubs have of he can still be Jose for us, the good Jose, the one that reaches Champions League finals and causes major upsets. And we might have to take a bit of rough and smooth with him, but I can change him back to what he was. I can make. Yeah. I mean, it is. That's what it feels like. It feels like that. No. I can make him work for us. He's still that Jose that we knew and that we loved. He's not gone too far, kind of thing. So, if you want to make a splash, garner attention, Jose would be the one to bring in. Now, would I think it's a smart idea? No, but we see a lot of poor decisions get made around the world of football these days, and Jose Mourinho still being hired is perhaps one of them. So if it continues to happen and a return to the Premier League, him in the Premier League just fits somehow with all the drama that's tried to kind of bait up and everything, and he just plays into that English media so much. An English media that does themselves no help whatsoever. Did you see the clip in the Champions League with Saka?
Yeah,
I
did.
Journalist, and then the Sky Sports with Amorim, the day before.
If you haven't seen it, someone's basically telling Amorim that he should speak English in this press conference. It's about sporting because the Manchester United fans want to hear from him in English, and it's all a bit awkward and weird and doesn't really work. Yeah,
Amorim said, I'm only going to answer in Portuguese. I'm not going to answer in English right now. And then the Sky guy's like, but why? We've heard 15 minutes of you answering in Portuguese. Why don't you speak in English? It's like, I get they're playing Manchester City and everything, but don't Don't be that guy.
No, that was
who
weird.
just walks
I
into
agree
another
with you.
country and goes, talk in my language, please. Thank you very much.
I agree with you.
It's just-
Let's wrap up on the football.
So Mourinho works for England.
Say again?
Mourinho works for English
Yeah,
football.
and I think we'll see it once more in his career. So not going to be in the top half of the Premier League table, but at West Ham, you can see it. You can 100% see it. Let's wrap up the football by talking about Inter against Napoli last night in Serie A. Ollie, the first thing I thought is because I watched Inter against Arsenal in midweek in the Champions League, and if you're an Arsenal fan, if you looked at the starting 11 that Inter put out for that, and then you looked at the starting 11 that Inter put out for the game against Napoli, you'd have been slightly offended because Inter basically rested players for the game against Arsenal in the Champions League in midweek, and they played their full strength against Napoli. They're involved in the title charge at the top of the table. Ollie, you're the Italian football expert. Finished 1-1. What do you think of the game? Do you see it? Do you see highlights?
Yeah, I was watching this. I had multi-screen going on
Of course.
last night, obviously with the American football and everything else. But I did keep my eye on this. I love that Billy Gilmour and Scott McTominay are like the best thing to happen to Serie A central midfielders, probably since the 90s kind of thing. They run the show and pull strings. And Billy Gilmour, I think it was someone at ESPN was basically saying, if Billy Gilmour could provide more goals and find the back of the net himself a bit more, he'd be a £100 million player the way he's playing in Italy right now, which isn't too far off like a wild statement. This was almost as good as kind of the 4-4 we had the other week with Inter and Juve. This was fantastic to watch in terms of pure Serie A enjoyment. Both sides playing attacking football. Çalhanoğlu with a great strike from the edge of the area to pull into back level. I love watching Denzel Dumfries. He's so hit and miss, but when he's on, he's awesome.
Fantastic
and DeMarco on the other side
attacking
for
right
Inter as well.
back. Or can you even call him a right back, Ollie? For those that haven't seen Denzel Dumfries play, I mean, he's different to Trent Alexander-Arnold because I think he's more kind of explosive and wants to hug the touchline a bit more. But he's an absolutely fantastic attacking fullback that you could play in that 3-5-2 or in a 4-4-2 where you've got the ball all the time.
Yeah, or you can even just say sack off the defensive responsibility at this point and go and play on a right wing position because your delivery is excellent when you're on song and your pace and quality to beat a man. That's what I like seeing more than anything else, is watching wingers try and take somebody on down towards a byline or between the touchline. But Napoli have had a really good start to this season, and like losing Osimhen but bringing in Lukaku, it's not like a 1A and 1B type scenario. They're very different players, but they provide still that same finishing quality up front. Kvaratskhelia still excellent, and yeah, they've anchored this midfield with two Scottish dynamos.
Can I ask you a question about Simone Inzaghi? Why, Ollie, when people talk about the top coaches in Europe, Inzaghi is the man who's won Serie A with Inter, reached the Champions League final, could have won that Champions League final against City. Why isn't he spoken about in the same vein as some of the top managers in Europe, do you think? Because I do feel like he's not quite somehow considered as good as that upper echelon. Does he need to win the Champions League to do that? Do people think, you won a league title in Italy, it's not that impressive?
No, I think, to be honest, I'm not entirely sure why his name goes under the radar so much, because when you even think about like Maurizio Sarri, I think that carries more weight than a Simone Inzaghi, yet you'd argue that Inzaghi has been more successful in Serie A than Sarri has been in his management career so far. I mean, Simone Inzaghi's been the like under the radar guy for the whole of his life, though, hasn't he? I mean, Pipo was Pipo as a centre forward, and Simone Inzaghi was the other centre forward, the Inzaghi brother at Lazio for the majority of his career. That's what he was sought as. And like obviously, Pipo Inzaghi didn't do anything really too well in football management to date at this point. May end up being proved wrong in 5 years or so or something like that. But Simone Inzaghi's kind of worked hard with the Lazio side for a long period of time that, there's not the financial injection maybe that you even get at the very top of Serie A. So what he did was considered good, but he was also considered a bit of a nearly man in terms of not quite getting them to be able to sustain a consistent run of form during a whole season that would get them competing regularly for Champions League spots or put themselves in a Serie A title race, even though they played under him easy on the eye football. And then you have him at Inter, and it doesn't seem to elevate. If he'd won that Champions League final, it might have been different. But I also think it might not have been. People would have just gone, that was a lucky hit from the Italians. That was boring Italian football being defensive, a 1-0 win or something like that. So I don't know. It's an unexplained
It's interesting,
kind of
isn't
reason.
it? And also tactically, he's got a very clear way of playing as well. Very,
And it's good. It's interesting.
Yeah.
It's fast. It's keeping it on the deck. It's shifting it through the flanks and coming back inside around the top of the 18-yard box, but keeping width if you want to use it, and having a focal point in the centre forward. I mean, Lautaro Martinez is he's a bit like the Simone Inzaghi of football right now. I mean, he's such a good finishing centre forward.
Mate, he's
and it's
exceptional. I couldn't believe I saw him sign a contract till 2029, and I think he's 27. I couldn't believe that because I feel like he's got one. He signed that long contract now, so possibly not. And maybe he just loves being in Milan and whatever. But
contracts don't mean anything. Man.
They don't, but I mean, it's going to cost a lot of money to take a 27, 28, 29-year-old away from that football club. But I mean, he could play at Real Madrid, Man City, wherever. I mean, he's incredible. He's absolutely incredible. That's 40 minutes on football, Ollie. Let's do 20 minutes or so on any other sport. Donald Trump's impact on the sporting world. Donald Trump's going to hand over the 2026 World Cup trophy. What's the funniest nation he could hand it over to? Mexico?
Puerto Rico.
But it's going to be a great moment whoever he hands it over to, right? Yeah, Cristiano Ronaldo, Harry Kane, the Mexican captain.
It's wild how much it has the potential to be funny or like the snubbing that could potentially happen as well. Like I don't care.
And he's going to have an opinion, by the
left
way.
or right politics.
He's going to have a few opinions, Donald Trump, on the 2026 World Cup. Don't worry about
that. And you think it's going to be considered a Mexico, Canada, and USA joint World Cup with Donald Trump at the head of the United States? Like it's not going to be. It's going to be our World Cup. It's going to be that kind of like they're playing a couple of games down there, a couple of games up there, but. We got a lot of stadiums here. I said to them we could use every game in this state. I mean, it is. It's going to be that. Like, we don't even need those stadiums up in Canada or down in Mexico. We got a lot of places we could host games. So many. A lot of boxes. Big boxes for dignitaries.
Let's bloody hell, Ollie, you're getting very, very good at that. And we're going to have some fun with that over the next 4 years of... I believe. Right.
You'll be tired of it by 2 weeks.
100% I won't be.
But the weird one is the Rory McIlroy.
Yeah, talk about that, Ollie, because Rory McIlroy said Donald Trump can bring peace to the golfing world, right?
I do not understand this. Obviously, Bryson DeChambeau's up with Donald Trump at the victory party in the week and all that kind of stuff, and they've been on YouTube together, and Trump was on Bryson's YouTube channel and made an eagle himself and all this kind of stuff, which went viral around the world, particularly in the golfing world. And obviously that means Trump has links to Liv and a very strong ear at Liv through Bryson DeChambeau and his power that he commands in that sport, particularly as a major winner this year and one of the biggest faces on the YouTube scene. I mean, Bryson DeChambeau is ticking every single box. He's a major winner, so he's featured in events including the PGA Players this year and won. He's a Liv Golf winner and making a ton of money off that, and he's a YouTuber, so he's hitting the social media attention bracket as well. So that's a big pull for Trump to kind of have those discussions with Bryson. But the Rory McIlroy comments, because he was talking about, somebody mentioned how good Trump was at making deals, and Rory was like, "Oh, he's a great deal maker," in a very Trumpian style kind of quote of, "Oh, he's a great deal maker. Maybe he can make something happen." And I just, I don't really get, are we going to send Donald Trump in on behalf of the PGA and Liv Golf to go and have these discussions to bring it all together? Which, at this point, it looks like it's happening anyway, because Monahan, the head of the PGA, has been out in the UAE and Saudi Arabia having discussions around a big conference that's to do with the PIF and where they spend their money anyway. So it looks like things are coming together. But I just don't know if Donald Trump is really the guy that you want to have. And he's a huge golf fan, so he probably is like a lot of us in that he wants to see these Liv Golf and PGA Tour come together. But would I be sending? Maybe you do. Maybe, I mean, this is the equivalent of a Noel Gallagher on co-coms, and now Trump is just stepping in, and we're having the president of the United States sorting out the PGA and Liv Golf.
Do you think Donald Trump's more likely to end the war in Ukraine or to solve the problems in golf?
Yeah, probably end the war in Ukraine. I imagine. I don't know. Probably more likely to do that. I guess that's what he should be doing more than solving the
That
problems in
makes
golf.
more sense, probably, as the president of the United States of America.
Job criteria wise, like let Monahan and Piff have their discussions, and you sort out the big picture stuff. Even if you're a fan of golf, I mean, if you became president of the United States, Dave, or ran this country, I don't know if you could say king or PM, because the PM doesn't really have that same level of like pull, I think, in this country as the president of the United States does, but the king kind of does in that sense. Would you get involved in, sorting out a sport and a...
It's got to be authentic, Ollie. So I think as a leader of any kind of nation or political party, what people value most is authenticity. So if I wasn't into sport and I started wading in sporting events, I think that's a really ugly look. It's what everyone knows when you see a politician or someone, a celebrity, pretending they know something about sport. It comes across horribly. But because I am into sport, yeah, I'd definitely have a bash, mate. I'd be having dinner with Infantino, and I'd be in Saudi to ask him what they're up to over there, and I'd be all sorts, mate. Because that's authentically like, I'd be
who you are,
getting tickets to all the England games across every sporting event, of course.
And maybe that is Donald Trump,
because he does like golf. Like, as you say, it's not an inauthentic thing to do. It does kind of make sense.
Yeah, the World Cup thing's slightly different. I don't know how much he knows about.
What we need is Donald Trump taking a Diana Ross style pen. And by the way, he'll be like 80. He'll be 80 at the start of the World Cup, or maybe him in goal, or something like that.
Waddling up to the 12-yard mark, just
hilarious. Pointing where he's gonna put the pen. Okay,
the goalkeeper's dressed in like Russian garb or something like that as well. We're just going straight
message
back
under
to
the
1980s.
Message under the shirt. Build the wall or whatever. Right.
Oh my god. Imagine a player lifting their shirt up and having Trump slogans in like Major League Soccer over the next few weeks.
Okay.
It's different to the Jesus stuff you get in South America. Just MAGA gets pulled up underneath the shirt.
Mate, make golf great again needs to become a thing as well. So, okay. Any other sport? Let's talk about Jake Paul against Mike Tyson, Ollie, which is taking place UK time Saturday morning, I believe at about 6 a.m. So if you're up early on Saturday morning, you might be able to catch a stream. It might be about 5:30, I think. Ringwalk maybe at 4:30, can't remember. But yeah, it's very early hours on Saturday morning. Obviously, it's a massive story in the US. Doesn't really, I don't think, resonate too much to a British audience. Maybe if it was a British YouTuber, people would get involved. Obviously, there's a lot of criticism about this, Ollie. I was thinking about this just before we came on pod. Is this kind of like the modern art argument? As in, you see like an unmade bed or like ketchup splattered on a white wall, and someone will be like, that's not art. But the art is the marketing and the fact that you're talking about it. That is art because it evokes some kind of response. So when people say like, this isn't proper boxing, is it just like, well, Jake Paul's an incredible marketer, and marketer is the thing, and so therefore it's boxing? Am I going somewhere with this, or am I not? I don't know. What do we think? Jake Paul, Mike Tyson?
I kind of get what you're saying. Look, let's give Jake Paul... I never really thought I'd be doing this, but give him some credit.
Yeah, he could box.
Like, he's not half-assed this whole boxing thing. He is trying to box, and he's not just going in there and swinging like one of those kind of, your mates do for charity, where they fight a random other bloke with headgear on and stuff like that to make a charity boxing night or whatever. It's not like that. He's putting in the hard graft to try and learn how to do this sport and do it well. And it was interesting. I spoke to a couple of like proper boxing experts a few years ago when all of this was really building up steam. And I said, like, isn't it a bit naff and rubbish and detracting from the actual like great fights potentially? And they kind of said, no, not really. Like, it's more people watching boxing, which is a good thing. It's a bigger audience for the sport, and it's not actually affecting anything higher up in the sporting world anyway. And it's just kind of boxing doing its equivalent of the T20 or the 100, in cricket. Like, all right, we're a sport that's falling out of favour slightly with the younger generation. Here's Jake Paul. Everybody knows Jake Paul from 20 years and under. Everybody knows who's Mike Tyson from 40 years and over. Right, let's put them together. Let's have them have a fight. It works out for both of them brilliantly in terms of Paul and Tyson. It works out for the sport. And because you've got like the WBO, the WBC, the IBF, like all these boxing federations with their titles, and as we've seen and discussed, you get Tyson and Fury and Joshua dancing around each other and not actually having their fights because of various pulls from either the different boxing organisations or the promoters, etc. What this is doing at least is going, yeah, I'd actually watch Jake Paul fight Mike Tyson, and that's a fight that's going to happen. So I'm more interested in seeing that than seeing Daniel Dubois and Anthony Joshua fight again, because I don't need to see that because I saw Daniel Dubois already beat Anthony Joshua hands down. Why do I need to see a rematch of that when I'd rather see Daniel Dubois fight Tyson Fury? I'm getting frustrated with the politics of proper boxing. I'll still go and enjoy this, and that might keep my toe in the boxing waters, so to speak. And you've got Tyson Fury against Usyk coming up at the end of December, and this is like the kind of warm-up to big fights coming up round the corner. You know, you've got this coming up, which will get a lot of attention, and every single boxing channel that is running this will go, and look what's coming up down the line. We've got Usyk against Fury, the rematch for the Undisputed Heavyweight Championship of the world. It all just works out quite nicely for the sport, I think. So I'm not as against it as I used to be and as I kind of once was, but it's not proper boxing, but it's still a boxing fight. I wouldn't step in the ring with Mike Tyson.
Are you going to wake up to watch it? Will you be in Dubai?
I won't wake up to watch it. That's one thing. Like it's not enough of a pull for someone like me I wouldn't spend 25, 30 quid to watch it on TV. I've been stung by boxing in the past with buying fights that just aren't good enough, and it's not worth the money for me to kind of risk it in that sense. But I mean, does it garner any interest? I know you're not a massive
if it was on at a time I was awake, then I'd definitely watch it. Yeah, I wouldn't pay for it.
Would you pay to watch it?
Say again?
You wouldn't pay to watch it?
No. Obviously, there's other ways.
Oh no, you're not.
Right. Let's talk. Let's go back to money, seeing it's been a big theme of this pod. The WTA finals, which for the non-initiated tennis fans, at the end of the year, you have like the ATP finals for the men's and the WTA finals for the women's, and it's basically like the top handful of players in the world all face each other. The WTA finals are played in Saudi Arabia. Coco Gauff won, and the prize money, as I mentioned at the beginning of the pod, for the winner for Coco Gauff, she picked up £3.7 million. Okay, that's more, by the way, that's like $1 million plus more than any other slam. And it just got me thinking, Ollie, like, are there lots of examples in sport, possibly golf has a couple, where the prize money at a certain event is very, very high, but it's not necessarily the most prestigious event? For example, nobody really outside of the tennis world would know or care that the WTA finals took place in Saudi Arabia and that Coco Gauff picked up a check for 3.7 million quid. But most people are aware, like when the slams are going on, especially their home slam. And it just got me thinking, are there kind of golfing events where the prize money's massive but the eyeballs are low? Because this WTA finals in Saudi Arabia, it struggled to get a crowd, I think, for lots of the early games. There wasn't that much attention on it. There was a bit of controversy because previously it had been in like Mexico and it didn't work, and somewhere else, and Saudi offered the WTA this deal, and the WTA, which do like to occupy a moral high ground on lots of issues, just said yes to Saudi because that's where the money was, and they got criticised for being quite hypocritical about some of their stances. I'm wandering into different territories here, but are there examples in the sporting world where prize money's massive but nobody's watching?
I think almost everything backed by Saudi Arabia at this point is having that. I mean, Liv doesn't garner eyes and ears. The only reason it has attention is because there are still stars that are winning majors in Liv Golf and making a splash when they do get the rare opportunity to play on the European Tour or to play in the big competitions throughout the year. So I can't remember the prize money off the top of my head for Liv, but we're talking millions. For the golfers that win that. It would be more than a number of the majors that will take place, and definitely than most of the PGA competitions. So, but no one's watching and no one's there, and you can go to a Live Golf event and you can stand like right by the ropes, right in front, as opposed to going to a PGA event when you've got like Rory McIlroy and people, and you're kind of 3-4 deep tee boxes and things like that. So there's definitely that. I think boxing's probably the same, where the money that Jake Paul and Mike Tyson will make will be way bigger than a number of big fights that you'll have that are officially syndicated title fights. But there's no there's nothing on the line for Jake Paul and Tyson, is there? There's no jeopardy. If you lose, Tyson loses a bit of reputation, but then Jake Paul's just a guy that's knocked out a 50-plus-year-old bloke. That's
58.
I think if Jake Paul wins that, he loses his reputation slightly. I think if
he's odds on, by the way.
If he loses, he goes in, loses to one of the greatest heavyweight fighters of all time. No one's going to, who we've seen videos of him still having the power and some of that speed. No one's going to go, can't even beat Mike Tyson. No one has ever said that in their entire life since probably his first time in a boxing ring. Oh, what? You can't even beat Mike? Jeez. But if you beat Mike, you're beating up a 58-year-old boxer who's maybe had too many hits to the head over his career and has made a poor decision in stepping into this ring, especially if you beat him by knockout. That doesn't look good for you. Like, great, you beat Mike Tyson, but you didn't really beat Mike Tyson. You beat Mike Tyson at 58. But I digress. So boxing's definitely got that as well. It doesn't happen in team sports as much, I think, because you have to pay so many people in a team and have that construct of the team around you, that you have to have the eyes and attention. Otherwise, you can't necessarily afford to put that prize money up as well. But that could change. You know, Saudi will. They tried with the Saudi Pro League, didn't they? I mean, they're
still
spending
trying
a lot of money on it. Yeah,
and maybe it'll work.
But it's half empty stadiums.
Yeah, at the moment, sure. But maybe you can encourage. It has to start half empty stadiums. Maybe. I mean, you're never going to hear me speaking ill of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, Ollie. We know that. But, I mean, you've got to start with half-empty stadiums. You get a new generation involved in sport, and possibly in 20 years they're full. Who knows? And
they've got a plan for it. But I think it's a shame that so much sport is discussed around the financial terms. Like, it doesn't matter to me that Rory McIlroy wins 3 million and gains 13 million for all his social media interactions. What matters to me is he's still not won a major. Like, you can have all the money in the world, Rory, but I know that is beating you up more than anything else. People can keep throwing the cash at you, give you more sponsorship deals and all that. Fine, have a new tailor-made driver, all that. But you've now gone over a decade without winning a major, and that is killing you more than anything else. And I don't take joy in that either. I'd love to see Rory finish it. But that shows to me that when we write headlines and discuss sport in they made this amount of money, for so many on an individual level, you can only have so much money. It can't replace the joy of victory and the joy of winning an important competition. And look, no disrespect to the WTA finals at all. That's still a big competition. But if you win that and win 3 million, you'll be remembered for money. If you win a US Open, you'll be remembered forever. So,
did you see what the commentator said? I want to talk about this off pod, actually. Did you see what that commentator said about?
No.
All right, I'll talk about that off pod. Wrapping up the other sport, NFL, extending their branch. Where are we now? Brazil, Ireland. What's going on?
So we had Munich this weekend, which was the people of Germany finally got to see what it's like to have an actual international series game, because last year they had one of the best lineups in terms of teams going over to Germany for the first time, and it was great success. And now they had to deal with the New York Giants and the Carolina Panthers, who are quite literally the two worst teams in the NFL this year. And it was a game that went to overtime. The German fans loved the fact that it went to overtime, and that's great. And I kind of like that the commentators on the NFL Network, this guy Rich Eisen, had learnt the word for in German for overtime, and so he was like, we're doing Zunderweiser or whatever it is, so this kind of thing. And like, it was also as well, like the official. So Ed Hockley is a very famous NFL ref. His son is now a referee in the NFL. And Ed Hockley, when he was in charge of a game in Mexico, started calling the fouls, because they announced the fouls for the flags on the play to the stadium, started calling them in Spanish. And his son was doing it sometimes in German yesterday as well, which I thought was it's a great touch. Like, it shows you're trying to actually give back to the people that are at the stadium rather than demanding that they know English. So it's a fantastic kind of spreading of the game once more. We've had Brazil to start this year. We've had London. We've had Germany. And now they've announced that within the next year or two, Ireland is going to have a game, right? Roger Goodell pretty much said that in an interview. They're going to Spain next year as well. There's going to be a game in Madrid. I mean, this is getting big to the point that they're talking about having like 1 week of the season where there's just international games, like 16 international games in a year.
Does this happen with the Premier League eventually?
Well, this is where I wanted to go with it with you, of why has it been so accepted? Like, the American fans get frustrated quite a lot, but the NFL did it quite well in that they expanded the season to 17 games when it used to be 16, so you'd have 8 home, 8 away. And then your 17th game, if you're doing an international game, is your extra home
That's
game
the play.
that you would have had.
That's the play. So it's a 39th game of the Premier League season, which is maybe right in the middle of the season. It's one weekend where everyone goes off and plays that one additional Premier League game in a neutral venue all around the world.
And people still hate that idea. People still are so against that when it comes to Premier League football. Yeah, it's just the way it's going, isn't it? Like, if it happens and the clubs agree on it, the clubs have to agree on it, don't ever complain about travel. Mm-hmm. Don't ever complain about traveling games because you're adding more to it and you're willing to do it. The difference is an NFL season is relatively brief in terms of compared to a Premier League season. You can talk about physical endurance and all that.
Just on the benefit for that, the argument for is that if you've got a fan in China, in Argentina, in Nigeria, wherever, and they're a fan of that Premier League club, what an incredible opportunity to actually go to a game. That's you're broadening the reach. Obviously, that's driven by financial reasons rather than like altruistic reasons. But you can hide behind, we're giving everyone an opportunity to go and see Premier League football live, right? And the counter is, what about the Scouser who's been to Anfield for every home league game for 17 years, and now they're playing a game in Melbourne and he can't go because it's expensive and would cost thousands, etc., etc., etc. So you've just taken his football club away from him or her. Mm-hmm. So that's the kind of counter argument. I don't know.
I completely understand both. Like, if you are that guy that's been there, we consider, I think, our sporting heritage a lot more than the US sports necessarily do to some extent, in terms of there are those people that, we've had a season ticket. My dad had one. My granddad had one. His uncle had one as well, that kind of thing. Whereas, season tickets in the NFL, there are franchises that came around in the 1990s and early 2000s, so it doesn't have that long-standing history, comparatively speaking. So I would understand that emotional connection. And the other thing I was thinking about as well, actually, all kind of wrapped around this and a bit to do with the expansion of the Champions League, is would it be better for football to play fewer games because you're less likely to have stars being rested and every person will see the best starting 11 out there on the field, which inspires kids and youngsters as much as anything else. Like, if you went to Man City for a Carabao Cup game and say it's the only City game you get to go to, and you see a reserve team, there's no Haaland, there's no De Bruyne, there's no Rodri. Well, he's out anyway, but you know what I mean? Like, the stars are not out for that game that you go to see. In the same way, people get annoyed when NBA players sit. They've got a very long season, a lot of games. So LeBron James, you might go and see the Lakers play, and you don't see LeBron, you just see Bronny. And that would break your heart as a kid going, that first game I ever get to go and see the Lakers.
Welcome to sport, kiddo. It's not it's not all unicorns.
I'm trying to have the holistic, finally positive, holistic kind of moment. And Windsor slams it down with a disregard for the young supporters. So, but then if you're going to do the Premier League going around the world, you're adding more games. So then do more players get rested?
You're adding one more game.
Not travel. Yeah, but it's the travel as well and everything.
Sure,
like
but
that.
You can chip away at that, I think, you could alter the FA Cup a bit more. I don't know. There's a way to kind of chip away at that, I think. We just added another 2 games to the Champions League without anyone batting an eyelid, seemingly, and everyone agreed.
Well, now that everyone's complaining now, like, that was the kind of discussion in the build-up to last week's Champions League games and stuff. There were more complaints starting to come out about how there are too many games and players are asked to do too much. It's like, but you keep agreeing to have these competitions that get added to.
Prediction.
Sorry,
carry on.
NFL season is 17 games. You can add one extra one, make it 18. You can't take a 38-game season, add in 5 FA Cup ties, 3 Carabao Cup ties, 8 Champions League ties at a minimum, which you're probably going to get through to at least another 2. So that's 10 Champions League games. And then say, we've got to find somewhere in the middle of the year to go to Melbourne when we've got a week to kind of do that, or go to Los Angeles or something like that. It just doesn't work. And you send a poor quality product out as well.
I've got a prediction that will happen in the next 10 years. I think you'll see a lot of number 2 coaches actually taking the side for some away games. So I think in those last 2 Champions League games, when everything's wrapped up, and let's say in a year where City have already qualified in that top 8, and their last 2 games mean nothing essentially for them, you'll see like a youthful City squad go out with the assistant coach, and I think that'll become part of the norm. Or like you've got a League Cup tie away at Torquay, and you're Chelsea. I think you'll see the assistant coach take that. So I think that's a natural progression of the game when you look at players.
Less is more, though, isn't it? Football meant more to us watching it because there was less of it on the TV.
Yeah, it was more magical, of course. People talk. Yeah, of course.
Like anything that's a limited edition, less is more.
Of course.
Like,
don't get me started on the Bitcoin price these days, Ollie. Yeah, scarcity donates value.
Let's maybe think about reducing to add to the enticement. The value of every single game goes up dramatically if there are fewer games to watch. And I've always wondered that about the Champions League kind of expansion, everything like that. Why don't you just demand more and reduce the competition?
Well, you know why? Because more games is more money, and that's pretty much the end of it.
But you can demand more per game.
Yeah, possibly.
So then you could demand a huge amount of money, like Premier League style money from these broadcasters. If you're UEFA, if you're guaranteeing, right, well, we're going to have like 90% of this competition is going to be jeopardy and great sides.
Let's go into the mailbag, Ollie. Feel free to email us, by the way. I think it's willwinpod@gmail.com, if I'm not mistaken.
That's the one.
Feel free to send your topic discussions and questions for the Will Win Pod.
But keep your opinions to yourself.
Say again?
Keep your opinions to yourself. Questions are fine, but opinions.
Leave the opinions to us. Why do South American players love the no-look pass? Sent in from my friend Mike. I thought about this, Ollie. Why do South American players love the no-look pass? Because they do seem to like it more than players from other continents. I think it probably emanated from when there was a lot of street football going on, which doesn't really happen. Certainly doesn't happen in Europe. When was the last time you saw like kids playing on the street football? It doesn't happen. South America probably does still happen in certain barrios, but I think that, there was a R roll in there, don't worry. In certain like parts of town, in maybe the poorer neighborhoods, there is a bit of street football going on, I think, in Brazil and Argentina. And I think it probably emanates from the tiny spaces and wanting to look a little bit flash and cool maybe. And that's part of maybe the South American football culture. And even though the street football's gone, you still do have the tricks and the flicks and the nutmegs and that kind of stuff is probably more integrated in South American football. And so that's why, Luis Diaz or Bobby Firmino's doing a no-look pass. What do you think?
And foosball as well. On the indoor pitches, the 5-on-5.
Futsal.
You need more trickery. Futsal, sorry, yeah. You need more trickery. You need that ability to get somebody to step just half an inch the other way. So things like the no-look pass, which actually a lot of these players do play futsal and football, obviously growing up at their younger age. So I think it's there. I also think there's that big fish in a small pond type thing. Everybody wants to be the big fish. We've seen it time and time again with the younger, like 18 to 21-year-old South Americans who've got a little bit of weight to their name, and they're just trying to do every flick, trick, and skill on the planet to show off, to make me, I'm a South American footballer, get me out of here kind of show. And
the Kendry Pice effect.
Exactly. And I think there is that kind of attitude of South American football still got the flicks, and I'm doing this every week. I mean, it's not just a no-look pass, is it? I mean, we were there for the Panenka glut of penalties, where every other penalty in the CONMEBOL Libertadores was a Panenka, and we were like, goalkeepers just need to stand, because there's too many players doing this too often for it to now be considered trickery. It's just almost considered like a 50-50 chance somebody's going to try and do it. So I do think it just comes with the territory of an inferiority complex. So let's show off tricks and flicks, and I think it's just part as well of the kind of football growing up, so to speak. Will Win Podcast @gmail.com.
Love it. Will Win Podcast @gmail.com. Yeah, send us your hate mail.
See it.